Welcome to the Booktopia podcast. I'm Ben Hunter, Booktopia's fiction category manager, and this is a podcast about books and the fantastic people who read them and write them. Today's podcast is a special one. I'm joined by fellow Booktopian Sarah McDuling. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
And today's guest is a superstar. Jane Harper is the author of The Dry, Force of Nature, and The Lost Man. They're all bestsellers. She's won a string of awards, including the Gold Dagger and the Australian Book Industry Award for Book of the Year. Her new novel is called The Survivors, and it's very good. Jane, welcome to the Booktopia podcast.
Oh, hello. Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure to have you on. The Lost Man, for me, was the perfect mystery novel. You set it up so perfectly with this mind-blowing death tableau out in what's essentially the desert, and then you draw in a small circle of people who are all distraught and complex, and you slowly and carefully squeeze the truth out of them. The Survivors is a rewarding novel in very similar ways, of course, but it is certainly not in the kind of closed-off, red dirt, northwest Queensland cattle station that we have burned into our minds from your previous novel. You actually take us to the west coast of Tasmania, to this beautiful tourist town. What's drawn you down south off the mainland?
I think for this novel, I really, wanted to capture that kind of coastal elements. And I start thinking about a setting really early on. So as soon as I'm thinking about the plot, I'm thinking about where is the best place to set this. And I knew I wanted, this kind of small kind of seaside town, which is very reliant on tourists, but at the same time has this real core community of locals. And I wanted that kind of a rugged, seascape as well for it all to play out against. And I think Tasmania was just the really obvious option. It was, it's such a kind of beautiful coastal state. I think it has a lot of those real kind of sort of small communities. They were kind of ideal for where I wanted to set it. And it just has that, the landscape I just thought was the perfect backdrop to telling this kind of story with, the kind of small town intrigue and kind of secrets to be uncovered.
Did you go to Tasmania to research this? Because your main character, Kieran, does a lot of hiking around this breathtaking coastline, and it's so atmospheric, and he does a lot of it with a baby strapped to his chest. And as I was reading, I couldn't help wonder if that was your experience when you're researching The Survivors.
Yeah, so it was actually, and it was actually quite similar to my own experience. So I've been to Tasmania a few times over the years, and I think that was partly what drew me to write about that state this time. But I do what I always would try and do, which is when I've got the kind of the core plots fairly firm in my mind, I like to go in and do like the on the ground research and really get those sort of details and the sort of first-hand experience to weave into it. And so that's what I did this time. And I went on my research trip in February, so kind of the sort of the end, towards the end of summer, which is when the book is set. And actually at the time I just had my second child in November the year before, so I had this 12-week-old baby. So my whole family, we all went, my husband and my 3-year-old and my 12-week-old, and we all went on this sort of road trip around Tasmania. And so I spent a lot of time walking up and down beaches with a baby strapped to my chest. So I think that definitely lends itself to elements of the book.
Does having young children, especially in your care, in your charge as a new mother, give you a different energy or perspective? And when you're writing crime, when you're dealing out in the macabre?
I think it does to some degree. I think really for me, I always try and make sure the characters are kind of who they need to be. So I feel like some of them will have children, some of them won't. Some of them will have children of different ages and different relationships, and I think it's always the most important thing is to make sure that the character is kind of true to who they need to be, and then once you've worked out what that character is and who they are, then make sure that those relationships that you build are authentic. So, for me, Kieran, the main character in The Survivors, does have this 3-month-old daughter, Audrey, who is with him when he returns to his hometown, and so I was fortunate, I guess, in that I had real first-hand experience of having the baby the same age at the time when I was really writing a lot of those scenes. So yeah, it does help kind of weave in. But I think, like any author, you're drawing on experiences that some of which you've had personally, some of which you haven't, and you're trying to really tap into those elements that make the characters feel real.
Jane, there are a few things in this book that I've just been dying to ask you, where the inspiration came from and if they were based on real life. The first is the monuments of the survivors in the town, which play they're just sort of always looming. And it's like all the characters tell the time by looking at how deeply this monument has been submerged by the tide. And I just loved that idea, and I wondered if it was based on a real place. And the second was, you have an author character in this book, and I wondered if that was maybe inspired a little bit by you.
So the sculpture is I really liked that kind of idea of having this sort of piece of artwork that kind of is also tied to the landscape. And as you mentioned, I've also got an author character in this book who is a guy called George R. Barlin, and he is a very successful writer who's come to Evelyn Bay in Tasmania to seek inspiration from a little bit of coastal change. And I think when I'm doing the characters, like I said, I'm always trying to get those sort of authentic aspects. And I think the kind of professional aspect of his character was drawn a little bit from my own observations and experiences and conversations I've had with other authors. So that was that was quite sort of fun and interesting for me to write. But I think, like a lot of the characters, that's a professional aspect. It's just one part of his character. So he's also a little bit more than just his professional work.
Yeah. I like the character. I like when authors go a little bit meta.
Yeah, I love it too. Speaking of professional work, Jane, I want to know how you're settling in to being a world-renowned, successful author. Are you enjoying the career? Are you still loving it as much as when you started out? And is this something that you're going to continue on for years to come?
I definitely hope so. I mean, I wanted to write a book, my whole life. And then when I got, I wrote The Dry, and it got published, and it got the kind of reception it did, which was so far beyond anything that I'd ever sort of imagined it would. I think one of the best things about that for me was that it created this opportunity to write more books, and it meant that I could kind of be an author full time. So I definitely would hope to, this would be, something I'll be doing my whole life, really. And it's, it's really, it's sort of changed a lot over the last few years. I think, professionally, it's sort of helped. Every time you write a book, I guess you get to know your own pattern of working better. And I think, I've sort of learned a lot about what works for me in terms of, using my time most efficiently and getting those ideas on the page and getting through those sort of technical aspects that mean I can kind of accelerate the process and really focus on the creative parts, rather than having to worry about, how exactly do you go about writing a book. So that really helps, I think, having that experience.
And you have such a growing readership in both the UK and in North America. And I wondered, have you found that your international fans respond to your books differently or enjoy different qualities in your writing than you find with the Australian fans?
Yeah, I do. But I find even within, Australia, there's no real hard and fast rule about what people are drawn to with the books. it seems like, people kind of respond to different things, I guess, depending on their own, just taste and background and what kind of books they like, which is great, which is what we all do. I think everybody kind of gets something a little bit different from every book they read. But I mean, some people are really drawn to the landscapes, and some people like the mystery element, and some people, I guess, like the character relationships. And so it is something that I'm always interested in what people like as readers, but at the same time, it's really hard to think about, what you can do that is going to tick every box for every reader, because that's just not possible. So I always try and just come back to writing a book that, is the kind of book that I think I would like to read and is told in the best possible way that I can tell it.
Well, don't stop doing what you're doing, because you're doing very well. It's certainly true that your books can draw in readers who aren't necessarily dyed-in-the-wool crime readers. You can enjoy a Jane Harper book for many different reasons, not just the bloodshed. Speaking of the apocalypse, you toured the world greatly and did a number of events, I'm sure, before the kind of pandemic hit. I'm wondering, can you tell us a bit about maybe an interaction where you've been well and truly starstruck by someone, or have you ever had your expectation of someone who's a little bit famous completely upended by themselves in reality?
Yeah, good question. I get starstruck all the time, especially by authors, really. I think I still have to kind of remind myself that I guess I'm among them. Sometimes when I'm at festivals and things like that, and I see someone, I think, oh wow, they read a book. I go, that's so great, and then I think, well, no, I'm here because I also read a book. So it's sort of I think because whenever I meet an author or someone whose book I've enjoyed, I'm always like a little bit in awe of what they've done. I kind of guess I want to thank them for the experience that they've created that I've enjoyed. I really loved meeting Marian Keyes, who was over in Australia a couple of years ago, and I went to one of her events. And I loved reading her books like for years and years, ever since sort of like my 20s. I remember being, just a really, really big fan of hers. And I got to go to the event, and I was kind of trying to think, like, is there any possible way in assigning to you I can kind of bring up the fact that I wrote a book? And then just completely naturally, it came up during a conversation. She mentioned that she'd actually read one of my books during her talk. And it was an amazing moment, because I was like, oh my God, like this author who I've loved for so many years has actually kind of is like aware of my work, so that was a really special moment for me.
Oh, that's so lovely. Jane, I recently discovered something amazing about you, which is that you appeared on the long-running and beloved Australian TV show Neighbours. Could you tell us a little bit about how that came about and what that was like?
Oh, I did get to go on Neighbours. It was amazing. I think it was December 12th, I think the episode ran, if anybody wants to go through the archives. It was so how it came about really was I think there was a writer in the writer's room who enjoys my books, and they needed a book for prop for a separate episode, and so they got in touch to say, would I be willing for them to use the Lost Man as a prop for someone, one character kind of recommending a book to another. So I said, of course, absolutely. And they were saying, oh, you'll be using it in a positive way. And I was like, I don't care, just use it. So I think I must be so enthusiastic about it that then a little while later they got in touch, said, actually, would you be interested in doing a cameo? And I said, well, yeah, of course. Like, when do you need me? I'll be there today. And they wrote this really like fantastic scene where it's me and Toadie, the much beloved long running character, outside a community centre, and he's doing a kind of literacy program, and I turn up holding a box of my own books that I'm about to donate, and I hand one over, and he compliments the books, and we have a little kind of witty banter. And then I exit stage left. So it was Yeah, it was so fun. It was like it was like really like such a like. I mean, again, like I remember coming home from school and watching Neighbours, you know, and just kind of had a chance to be on. It was really really fun.
That's a thrilling story.
Yeah, I love
I hope
that.
we see more of you.
No, me too. I
On
know.
every
I mean,
iconic
surely
Australian show.
that's right. Yeah, or long running, returning character. I mean, I'd be, open to
Yes.
talks from that. So.
Speaking of the screen, there's of course the screen adaptation of The Dry, which stars Australia's superstar Eric Bana, which has been done. I'm aware, but its release has been delayed because of the state of cinemas not being open. Have you seen the finished movie, Jane? Are you happy with the final product, or is it still a bit of a mystery to you?
Yeah, no. Well, not only have I seen it, but actually, speaking of acting credits, I was also in it. So
This is amazing.
You're like
I know
Hitchcock.
exactly. So so I got to. So you're absolutely right. It's the movie is finished, and they filmed it in 2019 in various locations in kind of regional Victoria, and were kind enough to invite me up. To which I completely abused the invitation and ended up, inviting about a dozen of my, family and friends as well, to come and be extras in the funeral and wake scene near the start of start of the book. So if you look closely for the sort of 3 seconds we're on screen, you can see the church packed with me and assorted associates playing grieving mourners, and and that was really really fun. I got to meet Eric Bana and see the kind of I guess see what they were doing and sort of the landscape and then and I was really impressed on set. But it's quite hard to as a non-film person to kind of imagine what that's going to translate to in the finished product. But then again, I was lucky enough to get to see the finished film earlier this year, and honestly it's really fantastic. It's so superb. I can't even tell you how pleased I am with it. It was like everything I could have hoped for in an adaptation. It's beautifully shot. They're really really faithful to, I think, the spirit and the the feel of like the characters and the plot, and but it's done in a really sort of gripping cinematic way as well. It's not, they haven't just been really slavish to putting the book on screen. They've really created a really fantastic film in its own right. So I think it's due hopefully for release. I think April next year is what's being said. So but whenever it is, it's so worth the wait. Like, it's really really worth seeing, and I think if you like the book, you'll really enjoy it.
I can't wait to see it, and I don't expect you to be able to answer this in detail, but just a yes or no, was there anything surprising they did in the adaptation that you didn't expect, that you found surprising?
I think the thing that surprised me most in a really positive way was how they managed to kind of stay so true to the book while at the same time making it work really well in its own right on screen. So there's so many, I think all the key elements are in there, and all the characters are kind of completely recognizable to me, in relation to who they are in the book. And the scenes are kind of, you recognize the scenes from the book, but at the same time, they're kind of cut together or presented visually in a way that is really fresh. So I was sitting there watching it, and it was like there were times when I was thinking, oh my goodness, I wonder what's going to happen next, because it was just the way it was presented was so kind of visually fresh. It was, and then it would happen like, oh yes, okay, it's this bit now, that's great, and so I think that was really surprising how it was. Yeah, it was so I think it was so true to the book, but also just kind of really had its own life as a film as well.
What a resounding thing for the author to say, that you, while watching it, were wondering what would happen next. As the author of the book. Swinging back to The Survivors, Jane, both Ben and I just are so in love with this book. It's such a phenomenal read. And for me, for both of us, I'm sure, you are on a short list of authors where I always go in with high expectations, and those expectations are always exceeded. And I just wonder, after such a string of successes, this is building up to a question, like I'm getting there. After such a string of successes, and so many, every book you've had has been a bestseller, I wanted to ask, A, what kind of pressure does that put you under when you start a new project? And B, when you look back on your backlist, like, are you able to pick a favorite?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think, it is I am aware, like, expectations are high, with the books. And I mean, I have like high expectations myself, for them really as well. And I think if I let myself, like, I could find that really paralyzing, and it could be something that I think would be really detrimental if I sort of let myself kind of think about that in one way. So what I really try and do is I just, with everything with the books, I always just try and come back and focus on the things that I can control. And that is things like putting in, the thought process that I know, works for me, and doing the planning, doing the, putting the time in, doing the research visit. I don't take shortcuts. Like, if I think of something later that I think would benefit the book, I always go back and I will always rewrite whatever I need to rewrite to make it like the best it can be. And I think, and that's always what I try and come back to. I just try and do like the best job I can with it. And and I think, realistically, like, I wouldn't ask any more of any other author. I wouldn't expect any more from, my family and friends or my children, other than just do the best you can. So I feel like that's the thing to focus on, and that's what I kind of come back to. Just ask myself to do the best job I can, and I do, and I always feel at the end that I've left it all on the field. I mean, there's nothing else I could do to make this book better, for me personally. So that's kind of what I'm always aiming for when, by the time the book comes out. And in terms of like like a personal favorite. Oh, look, I mean, they're all. I'm sure lots of authors say this is kind of like, your favorite child, isn't it? I think they honestly all have like different meaning for me. I mean, I really, in the Survivors, I really loved like the mystery element in this book that came together, I think, exactly how I'd hoped it would when I started writing it. With The Lost Man, I really enjoyed like the research visit for that, getting to go to the outback. So there's always something different, I think, that I really enjoy about the books. And I guess ideally I want to look back on the whole body of work and feel proud of them all.
So you're in the same position as your readers. You can't really pick a favorite because they're excellent.
That's very nice of you to say. I hope that's
Very diplomatically put. What are you going to work on next, Jane, when you're not on set?
Pursuing my acting career. I'll start work, soon on thinking about the next book. I guess I'm always kind of somewhere in a cycle with one, really. I never do two at once, but as soon as one is finished, I'm kind of, it's time to start, I guess, thinking about the next one. And I'm really like, it's such I'm not just being coy. It's such an early stage. I genuinely haven't made any real decisions about that, other than I guess it will obviously be an Australian mystery. And I'm thinking a lot about the setting and what kind of story I want to tell with that. So I'll start kind of, I like to kind of work through a few ideas first before pinning anything down, or kind of see what kind of see what I'm kind of drawn to, and then see what sort of settles, I guess.
And are any of your other novels being considered, or would you like them to be considered for a screen adaptation as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm in talks. I've been sort of talks ongoing really about all of them. So the company behind The Dry, they have like they have character rights over Aaron Fawkes. So
Yep.
so there would be sort of the first point of call in terms of making Force of Nature, who has Fawkes as a returning character. So now the drive's completed. Hopefully, maybe we'll also be able to turn our attention to any possibilities around that one. The Lost Man has had like quite a lot of interest over the since it came out, really. I think with that one, I'm sort of holding off on that one until I find exactly the right deal for that. I think that's really important to get the kind of characterization and the ability to film in that kind of outback setting. I think is so crucial for that book. I think it's really important to find kind of the right home for that one. And with the Survivors, we kind of there's that's had some early interest just with the unpublished manuscript. So
wow.
So I guess hopefully watch this space with that one, and we'll see what happens.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, this is you're in a very privileged position, and we are just absolutely thrilled for your success, Jane, and it's been a great privilege to be able to chat to you today over Skype.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you so much to you and all at Booktopia for all the support you give. Not just me, but all Australian authors. I mean, I think you really do such a beautiful job of like showcasing our work and promoting us to to your customers and things. So it really makes a huge difference. So thank you for for having me on the podcast, and for doing such a great job of kind of getting people involved with Australian authors.
Oh, shucks, Jane.
Great books like yours make it all the worth.
Yeah.
Thank you to Jane Harper for joining us. The Survivors is published by Pam Macmillan, and you can order it and all of Jane's books from booktopia.com.au right now.
Thank you for listening to the Booktopia podcast channel. Don't forget, you can subscribe to us on SoundCloud and iTunes for free, and get access to hundreds of author discussions, book analysis pieces, and more. Or, if your eyes need a workout, head to Booktopia TV on YouTube. Don't forget, for all books featured in this podcast, and for access to a whole bunch of other fun content on our blog, head to Booktopia, Australia's local bookstore, at booktopia.com.au.